Tonight, try to remember the earliest moment of your life. Not your first birthday, not your first word, the very first second your eyes opened onto the world. You cannot do it. No one can, and the reason why is far stranger than you think. You have been alive every single moment since the day you were born. Your brain has been running, processing, recording, but somewhere between that first breath and the earliest memory you can actually retrieve, there is a wall, a blank, a void that spans years of your existence. Scientists call it infantile amnesia, but that name does not even begin to explain what is actually happening inside your skull. Think about what you do remember. Most people's earliest memory arrives somewhere between age 2.5 and 4. Some people push it earlier. Very few get close to age 2, and almost nobody remembers anything before 18 months. Years of your life, gone. Not because nothing happened. Plenty happened, pain happened, joy happened, your mother's face happened, your father's voice happened, and your brain was there for all of it, receiving every signal, reacting to every sensation. So why can't you remember? The standard answer you've probably heard is that babies don't have a developed enough brain to store memories. That's partly true, but it's also deeply misleading, because your brain as an infant was not inactive. It was not empty. It was doing something extraordinary, something that, ironically, made remembering impossible. Researcher Patricia Bauer at Emory University has spent decades studying this phenomenon. What she found challenges everything you assume about memory. Infants do form memories, short-term ones. They recognize faces. They respond to familiar voices. They show clear signs of learning. The problem is not that the memories aren't formed. The problem is that they are not being stored in a way that can survive into adulthood. Here is where it gets strange. Your brain, right now, stores long-term memories using a structure called the hippocampus. It acts like an index. It takes raw experience, tags it with context, emotion, time, and location, and files it somewhere retrievable. You can go back and find it later. That's how you remember your first day of school, your first heartbreak, the smell of your grandmother's kitchen. But when you were born, your hippocampus was not finished. It was still being built. Neurons were forming. Connections were being laid down. And here is the critical part. New neurons were being born inside the hippocampus at an astonishing rate. This process is called neurogenesis, and it is precisely this process, the very thing that makes your infant brain so powerful and so plastic that destroys the memories you make. When new neurons are born into the hippocampus, they do not slot quietly into an existing system. They disrupt it. They rewire connections. They overwrite old filing systems to build new, stronger ones. Every new neuron that arrives pushes out something that was already indexed. Think of it like adding thousands of new folders to a hard drive that keeps reformatting itself. Your brain was growing so fast it couldn't hold on to what it had already learned. Psychologist Paul Frankland at the Hospital for Sick Children in Toronto confirmed this in a landmark study. His team showed that artificially increasing neurogenesis in adult mice caused those mice to forget memories they had already formed. Slowing neurogenesis down made their memories stick longer. The faster the brain grows, the more it forgets. And no brain grows faster than yours did in the first 2 years of life. So here is the truth no one tells you. You were not forgetting because you were too young to remember. You were forgetting because your brain was too busy becoming itself. You were experiencing the world completely, fully, without filter. Every sound was new. Every face was a discovery. Every texture, every temperature, every moment of hunger or warmth or fear was landing on a nervous system with no prior reference point. Nothing was boring. Nothing was routine. Everything was signal. And all of it was being processed, reacted to, learned from, and then erased by the very growth that was making you smarter. Now stop and think about that. Every lesson your infant brain absorbed, how to read a face, how to calibrate trust, how to interpret tone of voice, how to feel safe or feel danger, was learned in a period you cannot consciously access. The foundation of your entire personality was built in a room you have no memory of ever entering. The emotional blueprints that shape how you love, how you attach, how you react under stress, all of it was written during the years you cannot recall. This is why certain things feel familiar without explanation. A specific smell that makes you feel inexplicably safe. A voice tone that triggers something you cannot name. A type of environment that either soothes or unsettles you in ways that seem to have no origin. They do have an origin. You just cannot get to it. The memories did not vanish. They transformed. Researchers now distinguish between explicit memory, the kind you can consciously narrate, the kind you can describe in words, and implicit memory, which lives in your body, your reflexes, your instincts, your emotional reactions. Your earliest years are almost entirely implicit. They are stored not as stories you can tell, but as tendencies, feelings, instincts, and fears that surface without warning and without explanation. You are, in a very literal sense, haunted by memories you cannot see. John Bowlby, the British psychiatrist who pioneered attachment theory, argued that the emotional patterns formed in those first wordless years become what he called internal working models, mental templates, blueprints. Your brain built them before you had language, before you had self-awareness, before you had any way to examine or question what was being constructed. And then it locked those blueprints behind a wall you can never fully climb. This is why your earliest relationships feel so powerful and so irrational. Why certain patterns repeat in your adult life in ways that baffle you. Why you sometimes feel something enormous, grief, longing, a love that seems bigger than its cause. And you don't know where it came from. It came from there. From the years you cannot remember. From the room your conscious mind was never allowed into. There is another layer here that most people miss entirely. When the hippocampus finally matures, somewhere around age 3 or 4, and memory starts to stick in retrievable form, something else happens. Language arrives, and language changes everything. Because human memory, the kind you can narrate, is deeply tied to language. You don't just remember events, you remember them in words. You store them as stories. And for the first years of your life, you had no words. The experiences were real, but they could not be translated into the format your adult mind uses to retrieve the past. This is why when researchers ask adults about their earliest memories, those memories almost always begin around the age when the person started using complex language. Not because nothing happened before, but because the brain's storytelling system was not yet online. You were living inside pure experience, with no narrator, no internal voice, no way to label what was happening to you. You existed before your sense of self existed. That is the thing that should stop you cold. There were years of your life during which you were fully conscious, feeling, responding, learning, suffering, loving, but there was no you watching it happen. No witness. The lights were on, someone was home, but the camera had not yet been invented, so none of it was recorded in a form you can play back. And here is the part that echoes forward into everything. The story you tell about yourself, who you are, where you came from, what shaped you, has a beginning you invented. The earliest memory you claim as your own is not actually your beginning. It is the first moment your narrative self was strong enough to take a photograph. Everything before it is out of frame, but it is not gone. It lives in how you sit in a room, in who you trust without reason, in what kind of touch makes you flinch, and what kind makes you exhale. Tonight, try to remember the earliest moment of your life. You still can't do it, but now you know. It's not absence. It's a foundation you're standing on right now, built entirely in the dark, by a version of you that had no words, no memory, and no idea that one day you would come looking.